Welcome back into the TribPreps video series. We are here for the Week 3 football preview. My name is Colton Bartholomew, reporter here at the Tribune. To my left here, Todd Sommerfeld, the sports editor here. And to my right, Alex Van Houten, one of the other reporters here in our sports department. Looking at a fun Week 3 where we get conference play started for real right now. Always an exciting time when you get to start seeing some old rivalries renewed. We look at Sparta Logan this week. We'll talk about them in a little bit. A lot of fun games on here. Todd, I want to start with one of the few non-conference games, actually the only non-conference game in the area this week. It's a big one between Onalaska and Lake Mills. We have seen Onalaska really step up to the plate with some big games against some good teams in the first 2 weeks here. You wrote about it in the Tribune today. What is Tom Yashinsky saying about how his team has responded to these challenges earlier in the season?
I think the best thing for them is they've responded kind of in all angles. I mean, they're playing well offensively, which everyone knew they could. They've been doing for years. Also been playing well defensively. And they're going to have to play good defense against Lake Mills. Lake Mills is going to come out and throw the ball over the field. Onalaska, I think is prepared for that with a good secondary. Like I said, it's kind of been playing very well front to back, it seems. I haven't seen them play, but talked to people and you've seen them play. You could probably talk a little more about what they can do well defensively on the field. But just looking at numbers, they're certainly doing the job. So, again, it's just another challenge, though. They really went above and beyond with their non-conference schedule this year, as did Holman, I think. And they won the first two. We'll see how they do with this one. Lake Mills is a good program.
Lake Mills put up 55 points last week. Not against a great team, obviously, but still 55 points. Your offense is doing some good things. And you mentioned seeing what this defense can do. And Lake Mills is a team that's going to put 4 to 5 receivers on the field every single play. And when you do that, you're asking a ton of your offensive linemen. You're asking your linemen most of the time in one-on-one situations with no help from a running back or anything on the backside to hold up against some pretty good pass rushers in Connor Haggerty, Nathan Lubinsky. Onalaska's interior defensive line is doing a good job. A little bit, you see it more against the run, just because I think that's a little bit more their game. Take up some double teams, keep the edges free. But that defensive line in a situation where they're going to see a ton of passes, how that pass rush gets off, and if they sack the quarterback 4 or 5 times, that's just a game disruptor.
And Lubinsky's moved back to linebacker, but he'll still get his shots to get in the backfield, I'm sure. They'll find ways to let him make plays. Other thing to remember about Lake Mills, it's a team that starts well. They were ahead of Menominee 10-7 before right. Menominee just blew their doors off. But we saw how good Menominee was last week by the way it played against Holman. So I think Yashinsky thinks that if Onalaska's in the game or ahead, the farther the game goes along, the better off they are.
And Tom Yashinsky mentioned this earlier in the season during kind of the preview part of the season, that he wanted to see more efficiency out of the pass game. Not always having to go that 50-50 ball deep down the field, taking the shorter intermediate routes, using their weapons offensively. They're doing that right now. Austin Larson, their quarterback, 7 touchdowns right now, no interceptions, taking care of the ball. I haven't seen the numbers on completions, but he's got to be right around that 60% mark, just the way that they're completing the ball through the air. And if they continue doing that, I think their offensive line is going to come around, get that running game a little bit more established. But it's probably been a pleasant surprise to this offense and to these coaches that they haven't really had to rely on the running game to move the ball and to score enough points to beat good teams.
You got a guy like Lubinsky hasn't scored a touchdown yet. They got 2 wins over 2 really good teams. I think one thing to throw in there about the passing game, obviously Landon Peterson, we knew he was going to be a focal point. They were going to try to get the ball in his hands, but I think Hank Olson has 11 catches in 2 weeks. So they're using him as well and not just going for that home run ball. And that's not what Onalaska does anyways, but they've always had good receivers for that, and Peterson is that. But Hank Olson also having a really good year for them.
Absolutely. So let's jump over to another game that we're going to feature this week. That's West Salem versus Holman. That game's at Holman at Empire Stadium. A fun one there just because West Salem's kind of had this thing with Holman. Even though they've been super competitive in the MVC since they moved over to West Salem, Holman's kind of been their bugaboo, which you could say for everybody in the conference. Holman's been a tough team to beat for everybody in the MVC. But Alex, you've seen West Salem play. What are they going to have to do against a Holman team that's, it's 1-1 right now after a tough loss in week 2 against Menominee, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, week 2. To come back and, maybe put another win together for West Salem.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the Panthers take on GT, week 1 there, and it was their typical West Salem GT matchup back then, and GT, Holman are similar to what they try and do with the triple option and everything, and West Salem, they're still going to rely on the offensive defensive line quite a bit, but if they can just try and keep themselves in a little bit and get something offense, can they get that passing game going? I'm blanking on the running back's name right now.
Derek.
Yes.
Yeah, he did not play in week 2 though.
He
so
didn't. Okay. Well, week one, they told me because he got knocked out late in week 1, and they told me it was just a cramp. So maybe
more of that then.
I mean, if he can't go, because that guy's a thumper. That guy can run you over, and he was really good against GT too. And if he can't go, I mean, it's only going to make it that much difficult for Holman, because I mean, when you look at the West Salem offense, it was really only him that night. It wasn't really too much around him. And GT did a good job. Don't get me wrong, but if West Salem, they have to continue to find more playmakers, and hopefully their defense can try and keep them in it. But as I saw when they played GT, they just got eventually worn down, that defense, and that's gonna be something to watch when they play Holman too, because Holman will do that to you.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned West Salem's got some experience against a triple option. Maybe not quite as deep as Holman's, where they have so many playmakers, so many guys that they don't mind getting the ball to, and that physicality they have on both lines. Holman's just kind of a different animal right now. You've seen them play, Todd. Just what are you seeing from their offense that's either different or maybe just what people haven't seen in the past couple of years, because they don't have that one guy that they're kind of feeding the ball and trusting to get some big yardage for them.
No, and we haven't seen just like the huge runs, the big plays. We've seen them in the past plays, and that kind of goes hand in hand with that offense. But we've seen a lot of them so far. Cam Weber's done a good job completing. I don't think the completion percentage is really high, but the ones he's hitting are going for big yards. And so they got that going for him right now. We'll have to see. People of Holman, we need to make sure the lights work this year.
Oh, yes.
Last year was our West Salem Holman game where the lights went out on half the field, and the second half was played going to the 50 and then turn around and come back. So we don't want to see that again. But they got through it. It was fine. But I think you certainly have to look at Holman with the upper hand going into this one, the way it's played. I think West Salem, the offense just hasn't quite clicked yet. I think they'll still be a team. West Salem will still be out there hitting hard. I think I've said in stories this year, it seems like Holman is hitting harder than it has before. And it's a physical team anyways, just the whole program is. So, but I think it's going to take a lot for West Salem to be able to pull this one off.
I would agree. Let's jump over to another MVC matchup here. We got Sparta going to Swanson Field to take on Logan. This is going to be an interesting one. Logan got back on the winning track last week up at Eau Claire North. Had to stave off a Hail Mary right at the end, but they were able to win. Sparta got a nice win at Westby. Had to respond. They got to a one-possession lead in the third quarter, but immediately responded with a touchdown, kind of took back over there. I think the big thing is, can Logan find a couple other playmakers outside of Max Harsey, because they know that they can depend on him for 120, 130 yards, maybe a touchdown a game. It's just, can they find another person or people to add to that, or just kind of distract the defense? Because if you're going to let Sparta, the way their defense has been playing so far, really lock in on one guy, you're asking for a tough night.
Julian Erickson had a good game last week, scored a few touchdowns for them, so that could be one of the answers. They got to get some kind of passing game going for sure. But yeah, I mean, maybe Harsey's a guy that you can rely on for more than you would normally think of a running back. Even if teams are keying on him, he might be one of those guys that can still make plays. But yeah, I think they'll keep trying to get Erickson going, quarterback, maybe try to complete some more passes. That'll obviously make things easier for Harsey. Stopping Sparta is a much different, much harder thing to do, I think, after 15 touchdowns.
Yeah,
15 touchdowns in 2 games. Logan's defense has its work cut out.
Yep. I forgot Sparta put up 70 points.
Yeah, 70 points in week 1 and 35 points last week. And the thing that I think is really encouraging for Sparta is, yes, it's a lot of Cole Wisniewski, their Division I player. He's going to North Dakota State, but it's not all Cole Wisniewski. His ability to find some nice receiving options, and then we saw last week multiple running backs having touchdowns and having big games. Just the way that Sparta is being able to spread the ball around when defenses are keying in so hard on Cole Wisniewski, that's a sign not only of good coaching but good talent development, that those guys around him know that everybody's kind of watching number 10 in the Sparta backfield, and what do you do to kind of counter that, maybe use that against the defense, is really a sign of how far Sparta can go.
Yeah, and it'll be fun watching Sparta go along and playing tougher defense after tougher defense after tougher defense because they're going to just kind of keep going like that.
I think this week Logan is the toughest defense they're going to play.
Yes.
Wesley played very, very well, but they were committed 100% to not letting Wisniewski keep the ball on the veer, getting to the outside. So they did intentionally let up a lot of inside runs, hoping that they could tackle and keep those gains short. I think Logan's going to have a little bit better of a plan and maybe trust their guys one-on-one to make some tackles on the outside than maybe Wesley just decided we're going to put 2 guys out there instead.
Yeah.
It just feels like, too, last week, that was such a big win for Sparta. I mean, Westby had all the momentum in the world. They came roaring back on the road, Sparta, and, they found other guys, like you mentioned, outside Wisniewski, and maybe Westby was giving them that lane, they were, and stuff like that, but the main point is Sparta made the pay with guys other than Wisniewski, and that's something that's just going to be huge moving forward.
All right, so we're going to look at, wrap up the MVC. Central's going to Toma. Steve Rundio, the Toma Journal editor, will be out at that game for us. So we'll have some good coverage of the Central Toma game. Should be a game that Central kind of puts themselves back on the right track after a tough one last Thursday against Memorial, where I think this is a game where we need to see Central's defense kind of show something because last week was a tough one. Obviously, when you're playing the Badger recruit Loyal Crawford, you're going to have a tough day. But last one was just not in the character Central's going to need to be an MVC contender.
And Toma's 2-0.
And Toma's 2-0, they're coming hot.
They got some momentum coming into the game, but I think they're going to have a tough time with the Davis brothers. And they've been such a connection so far, and we knew that would be the case. But it's been a pretty heavy one through 2 weeks.
Absolutely. Looking at kind of a different matchup that we don't see too often, Fenimore taking on Aquinas. That's in the new SWAL conference. That's going to be just one year of this conference, and then it'll get redesigned again. That game's at UW La Crosse. Todd, you and I both saw Aquinas in week 1. Aquinas ends up going up to Stevens Point and beat Pacelli pretty well last week. I think the thing that is interesting about Aquinas is that defense is, I think, a little bit better than people are expecting. They've only let up 2 touchdowns so far. So, I mean, the fact that they're, playing this well early and, holding Prairie du Chien to 1 touchdown in week 1, I mean, that was a pretty impressive performance.
Yeah, I think it was. It certainly isn't the same Prairie du Chien team that we saw last year, but Prairie du Chien came out and scored a whole bunch of points last week.
Right.
In week 2. So I think Aquinas can really, and talking to Tom Lee after that game, he really felt like that was a missed opportunity. I don't think he was surprised with the way the team went out and played. And now they're going to get into this conference in the SWAL and play some teams their size, and it'll be fun to see how they can compete. Will Cambio played well last week. Aiden Lee played well last week. So they've got some guys, and again, when they hit the passes, they're hitting some big passes, not a high percentage. But they certainly had a much better offensive game last week than they did the week before, and we'll see how that goes with Fenimore, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that was something too. I mean, when I did the preview story on Aquinas before the season started, you can sense there was that excitement, there ready for them because they knew they would be able to compete this year.
Sure.
I mean, Todd just listed off a number of guys, and they have more guys too. They have the numbers and the talent actually this year a little bit to actually be able to, really be in a game like Prairie du Chien, and they should have won it. They really should.
Yeah.
What they have a penalty on the 2-point conversion or something.
Yeah, penalty on the extra point that forced them to go for 2,
Yeah.
and they weren't able to get it. That cost them the point to win the game, or a tie or win the game. So.
And the guys there too are really starting to feel. They can feel the future starting to get built a little bit. That foundation's in place right now, but now they got to start translating that to wins too, as well. And I think that's where it starts. If they can get off on the right track against Fenimore in their new conference, I think, man, that's going to really set the bar high for Aquinas football here.
Good thing for Aquinas, and Colton, you were there. You saw it, I think, too, at the beginning. Teams lined up in their end zones, and Aquinas almost stretched from side to side.
Yep.
With coaches there, they just about got there. So much different than in recent years. I think probably had more kids than Prairie.
Yep.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Unfair advantage for Aquinas, I think, on that. Too many kids. But anyways, I'm very curious to see how they do in this conference, because you're not going to have to go play Holman and play Central, and there was a day where they could be competitive with those teams, but that's kind of past, and they're doing great with numbers, but the numbers still are tough when you're in school that size.
Yes.
So.
All right, so make sure you're on lacrossetribune.com right now and then all throughout Friday and Saturday, because you can right now read Todd's story about on Alaska and the big wins they picked up in week 1 and 2, and another one they're hoping to pick up against Lake Mills. You'll see all of our game stories Friday night, another recap video Friday night as well, and then on Saturday throughout the day, and then in the Sunday Tribune, you'll see our recap stories, some columns, some analysis from around the leagues, and around these high school games. So make sure you're on lacrossetribune.com. But for Colton Bartholomew, Todd Sommerfeld, and Alex Van Houten, thanks for watching.